More on our top story on remote working and flexible work arrangements. We have Dr. Mathew Mathews to talk to us about this study. He is the Principal Research Fellow and is also Head of Social Lab at the Institute of Policy Studies. Dr. Mathews, thank you for joining us. Our strong support, it seems, from your study for flexible and remote working arrangements to go on beyond the pandemic. And women were especially for it. Were you surprised at this particular finding?
Well, I mean, of course, looking at pre-pandemic, everybody was used to very much working from the office, but things change and you wonder whether people get sick and tired of having to work at home or some kind of flexible arrangement. But the polls seem to be quite clear. People seem to enjoy it. They feel that they're productive in that process. And particularly for women, we notice there's quite a bit of traction. And that's partly because you can think about caregiving burdens that often fall squarely on women. Now, men do participate in domestic work and childcare, but there still seems to be some kind of lag, and women often fill that lag, and whether it's caring for young children or an older person. So women in particular, flexibility makes it a lot easier to juggle home and work responsibilities.
So, Dr. Mathews, sometimes it's not a good idea to get what you want. So even if women think they want these work arrangements so that they can continue caring for the elderly or for children, if employers actually give these to women and accommodate these duties, we could in fact be increasing the burden on women in the longer term.
That is right. If flexible work arrangements are only for women, then essentially what we'll expect is that all the expectation for caregiving work will fall squarely on them. So in addition to paid work, you also have to do caregiving work. And in that case, you don't have men sharing that load. So this is crucial that whatever policy that's crafted or attempts at workplaces should ensure that it will not just be flexible work arrangements for only women, for instance. It has to include both men.
Oh, this is just one aspect of this. So this idea that we need to create the same kinds of flexibility for men as well. When we craft these changes, we call it remote work arrangements or flexi arrangements, but that could mean anything. Are there any specifics on these kinds of arrangements that people generally prefer and would be a good idea to do as an employer?
Well, in general, I think many workers want flexible arrangements where they have quite a bit of autonomy. They get to call the shots. They decide the days to come in, the time to come in. You decide that if you've got to send children to school, then you choose a date. I mean, you choose a timing to come to the office, or there might be days where you need to take care of or a medical appointment for your parent. Then you fix those dates. So that's one big part of flexibility. Also, it means for some, it means like going on a vacation, for instance, where you get to go somewhere else in the world, you travel somewhere nice and scenic, but then you try to combine work and your leisure together at the same time. But I think what's important is we have to remember that not every arrangement is possible. Employers also have operational needs, and employees need to empathize with the fact that there are organizational realities, the need for fairness in organizations, for instance. So somehow or other, some kind of mutual understanding and consensus needs to be there. So there's this lasting relationship between employers and employees.
It's a good point, which leads us to the next question. So not everything employees want, they are going to get. They have to work with employers who also have their operational needs. If we look at your survey, what does that tell us about the future of work and the kinds of policies that the policymakers as well as employers need to be mindful of when they draw up the new workplace for post-pandemic?
Well, one, perhaps the whole idea of focusing more on outcomes. We've moved away from just relying on face time, but really looking at the product of what as an employee puts out to the organization. So more of that needs to come in, and you may find ways to redesign work so you can really have flexibility embedded within the system. Then I think the main values that employers need to have when it comes to drawing these policies are to help employers or employees have autonomy, but also develop adaptability. And the pandemic has shown that you really need to be adaptable because adaptability is what allows people to move between all the different changes, which are going to be a mainstay within the world of work. And I think when you build an autonomy and adaptability, I think that will ultimately give employees lots of satisfaction and a greater sense of identity within the organization. On a broader, societal level, you need to continue to think about policies which help to mainstream flexible arrangement. There needs to be all kinds of ways to try to support that, whether it's infrastructure that's needed, the IT support that can come with or needs to come with this. This needs to be done if you're going to make a flexible arrangement a lot more possible. Then, you still have to consider the fact that, especially when Singaporeans, we did notice from our survey that quite a few Singaporeans are keen on remote work. It's becoming more popular. You can work in Singapore for an office based in some other part of the world. But of course, it's important to think about the kinds of protection that workers here would need to be able to manage this particular scenario.
Oh, thanks so much for that, Dr. Mathew Mathews, for all those nuances that were not evident in that simple story. That's Principal Research Fellow and Head Social Lab, Dr. Mathew Mathews from IPS.